You ever wake up to the sound of tires crunching gravel and realize it's not the morning paper, it's a raid? Yeah, that's how my Thursday started. Blue polos, clipboards, walkie-talkies buzzing like it's some undercover op. Only these weren't real cops. These were HOA volunteers, self-appointed. Neighborhood enforcers with fake badges and real egos. They rolled up like a SWAT team to my ranch gate, armed with citations and an attitude. Why? Because I built a barn. Not a party barn. Not a meth lab. A simple wooden barn on my private, 20-acre ranch, 2 miles outside their jurisdiction. But see, that didn't stop Linda, the HOA president. She called it an unauthorized structure visible from the road, as if my livestock needed a permit to exist. I should have laughed it off. But then they stepped onto my land, uninvited. That's when I knew this wasn't about bylaws. It was about control. And what Linda didn't know, what none of them knew, was who'd be arriving that weekend. Let's just say they picked the wrong time to play cowboy on my turf. Because when they busted into that barn, expecting hay, and maybe a goat, they came face to face with a dozen leather-clad men, and about 600 combined tattoos. And those weren't actors. They were real. Let's rewind. You need to know why the HOA declared war on my ranch, and how a biker gang accidentally became the best security system money couldn't buy. Because this story, it ain't just about a barn, it's about taking your power back. I moved out here to get away from people, bought 20 acres on the edge of town, peaceful, quiet, with just enough cell signal to ignore the world when I wanted. My nearest neighbor was half a mile out, and the only sound I usually heard was wind through the trees, and the occasional bull snort. Life was simple, until it wasn't. See, a new development popped up about 2 miles down the road. A subdivision of copy-paste homes with white fences, trimmed lawns, and people who wave with one hand while dialing code enforcement with the other. At the head of that pack, Linda, HOA president, ex-realtor, full-time control freak. She drove a spotless white SUV, wore mirrored sunglasses indoors, and treated the HOA bylaws like scripture. I met her once, at the gas station, when she noticed the mud on my truck and said, "You know, around our neighborhood, we keep things tidy." I didn't even live in their neighborhood. Still, about a month later, I got my first letter, hand-delivered, no return address, to the property owner at 237 Ranch Road. Your recent barn construction may be in violation of HOA visual standards, as the structure is visible from Pine Hill Drive. Please cease further development until reviewed. Reviewed? By who? I laughed and tossed it in the burn barrel. Thought it was a prank, but then came the drone. Yeah, a small white quadcopter buzzing over my pasture. It hovered, circled, then zipped back toward the subdivision. 2 days later, another letter, this one with photos. That's when I realized they weren't just nosy. They were watching me. I put up a sign, "Private land, not your HOA." Didn't stop them. Instead, Linda came in person, clipboard in hand, standing just on the edge of my fence line, yelling about visual contamination and neighbor rights. I asked her which neighbor complained. She just smiled and said, "I represent the community." Okay, lady. Then, mysteriously, my mailbox was ripped off its post. My fence slats were loosened. And someone, I kid you not, reported me to animal control. Because my chickens were too noisy. You ever seen a sheriff roll his eyes while filling out a noise complaint? For a rooster? I should have seen it then. This wasn't about noise, or barns, or view obstruction. It was about ego. Linda wanted to prove that her power didn't stop at the subdivision gates. And my ranch was the perfect target. But the real storm was still coming. Because the barn? That wasn't just a barn. It was about to become the headquarters for a reunion. One I'd been planning for 6 months. And when the HOA goons tried to shut it down, they had no idea who or what was waiting inside. That was just the beginning. The barn was my pride. Built it with my own 2 hands. Hammer in one and thermos in the other. 20 by 30. Clean pine frame, metal roof, and a vintage neon ranch life sign I scored off Craigslist. It wasn't just for storage, it was a gathering place. And this weekend, it was about to host something special. See, once a year my old crew comes through. We met over a decade ago at a charity ride. Veterans, mechanics, ex-cops, wanderers with hearts of gold and engines louder than your average jet. We call ourselves the Iron Spur. Not a gang. A brotherhood. Linda wouldn't understand. But she sure tried. The week before they arrived, she escalated. First came a written HOA fine for $750. Again, I'm not part of the HOA. Then a uniformed HOA enforcement officer showed up. That's right. They made their own badges. Looked like a parking pass taped to a windbreaker. He actually walked up my driveway, hand on his fake holster, and announced, "Sir, you're in violation of Section 4B regarding accessory structures." I said, "You step 1 inch farther, you're in violation of common sense." He didn't like that. Took pictures. scribbled notes. Left with a scowl. Next morning, my driveway was blocked. 2 orange cones, a fake road-closed utility repair sign, and a car parked sideways across the entrance. I had to cut across my own pasture just to get out. When I checked my trail cam later, guess who I saw? Linda and 2 of her HOA sidekicks, giggling like teenagers as they dragged the cones into place. That night, I poured myself a drink and made a call. "Y'all still heading through this weekend?" "You bet," said Bear, our 6'5" founding member with a beard that deserved its own zip code. "We rolling deep," I smiled. "Good. Might be a bit of a situation." He laughed, our favorite kind. Thursday morning arrived. I was in the barn polishing up some folding chairs when I heard tires. Not the heavy rumble of Harleys. The snappy crunch of compact SUVs. They came in a line, 3 of them. Out spilled the entire HOA committee like some weird suburban tactical team. Linda in the lead, flanked by Carl and Stacy, her clipboard warriors. "We are here to perform a visual inspection," she announced, snapping on gloves like she was about to do surgery. "You're trespassing," I said, calm but firm. "This is a community emergency. We have legal rights to enforce." I held up my hand. Then, the rumble. Low at first, like a storm in the distance, then louder and louder, until it was undeniable. The bikers arrived. Bear rolled in first, chrome shining. Behind him came Diesel, Scout, Grizz, and the rest of the Iron Spur crew, 12 men and women, all with the kind of presence that makes Karen types lose their marbles. Linda's face drained of color. One biker hopped off, nodded at me, and said, "Nice barn, boss." Linda stammered. This is intimidation. This is a threat!" Bear looked at her. "Ma'am, you the one who walked into his barn." Carl reached for his phone. "We're calling the sheriff." "Good," I said, crossing my arms. "You'll want law enforcement here when you're charged with trespassing, harassment, and impersonating an officer." That got their attention. Bear pulled out his phone too. "I got it all on camera, high def. Want to see the part where you block his road? Or the fake badge?" Linda turned red. "This isn't over." She stormed off. Tried to anyway. One of the bikers accidentally parked sideways, boxing her in. "Oops." The rest of the crew laughed, cracked beers, and fired up the grill. Burgers sizzling, classic rock blasting. The barn came alive. But I wasn't done. That night, under the stars, I explained everything to my crew. The drone, the letters, the threats. Bear leaned back in his chair and said, "Sounds like it's time to fight back." I nodded. "Got something cooking. Because justice, my friend, tastes best when served. Slow smoked. And tomorrow? Tomorrow would be the reckoning." The next morning the barn smelled like freedom. Coffee, motor oil, and grilled sausage. The Iron Spur crew was still lounging on folding chairs, swapping stories and tuning their bikes. But I was already up, printing documents and prepping the final move. See, I don't just own the ranch. I also own the land directly behind the HOA's main entrance. 5 little acres I bought years ago. Dirt cheap, just in case I ever wanted to expand. Funny how life works out. I grabbed my files and told Bear, "Want to take a little ride?" "Thought you'd never ask." We cruised down to the county clerk's office. Just 2 dusty boots and leather jackets walking. Past a bunch of folks in khakis. There, I filed 2 official complaints. 1, criminal trespassing, complete with security footage of Linda and her goons on my land. 2, harassment and false representation, citing their made-up HOA, enforcers, and forged warnings. But that wasn't the best part. I also submitted a land use request to build a temporary mobile vehicle exhibit on my 5-acre parcel by the HOA entrance. Translation? A biker rally, legal, loud, and very visible. By 3 p.m., the permit was approved. Turns out, county folks love the idea of free business traffic. I came back to the barn, pulled out a giant poster board, and handed it to Diesel. "Think you can paint this?" It read, "Biker Weekend. Live music. Open grill, free entry. Proudly sponsored by Iron Spur, Brotherhood, and your friendly neighborhood, HOA." The guys howled. We mounted the sign on a trailer and towed it, straight to the entrance of Linda's pristine subdivision, right across from her ornamental koi pond, and just in time for the Friday evening dog walking parade. You've never seen panic until you've seen 17 retired. Homeowners speed walking with tiny dogs, desperately dialing Linda. And just to really rub it in, we were polite. Bear handed out lemonade. Diesel waved to the kids. We even invited one confused guy named Steve to the BBQ. He showed up later with ribs and a 6-pack. But the real fun? Watching Linda unravel. She called the sheriff again. This time, a real deputy showed up. And guess what? He'd already reviewed my complaint. Said, "Ma'am, you're the one in violation here." Her jaw dropped. "But the noise, the motorcycles, the sign." "It's on his land," the deputy shrugged. and it's a legally permitted event. The look on her face could have curdled milk. By now, the whole HOA board was in damage control. Carl tried to start a petition. Stacy posted in the Facebook group asking, "Is it legal to build a soundproof wall around the subdivision?" Meanwhile, our rally was gaining steam. Neighbors who never talked to me before stopped by. Some brought food. One guy even brought a fiddle. The barn turned into a local legend. And through it all, I kept it chill. No yelling, no threats, just smiles, slow-cooked justice, and the soft roar of Harleys. But behind the scenes, the legal wheels were spinning. 3 days later, Linda got a certified letter, a cease and desist order, plus a pending court summons for trespassing, harassment, and impersonation of an official. The moment of power had shifted, permanently. The HOA had crossed a line, and I drew one in return, clear, legal, and unmistakable. You mess with a rancher's land, you get the horns. And in this case, you also get a dozen bikers with better manners than any HOA I've ever met. Saturday afternoon, hit like a movie climax. The barn was alive with energy. Live music thumping. The grill smoking, chrome bikes glinting under the sun. Kids were eating hot dogs off paper plates. Dogs were barking. Even the sheriff dropped by to say the ribs were borderline criminally good. And then, right on cue, Linda showed up. Not in her SUV this time. No sunglasses. Just pure, unfiltered HOA. Rage, stomping across the dirt in heels, completely unfit for ranch land. Behind her, a lawyer-looking guy in a sweat-soaked blazer and a very nervous Carl holding a manila folder like it contained nuclear codes. They marched right up to the barn while Bear and the others leaned against their bikes like a wall of denim and steel. Linda thrust a document toward me. "We are issuing a cease and desist. You are disrupting the quality of life for the entire neighborhood." I didn't even look at it. Just smiled and said, "Funny, that's exactly what I filed against you." She froze. I pulled out my own folder. The cease and desist she received 2 days ago, plus the sheriff's signed statements, drone footage, and the permit for the event. The lawyer's hands started shaking as he read through it. "Ma'am," he whispered, "he's got everything. You're exposed." Linda blinked. This isn't fair." I leaned in just enough to speak calmly, clearly, and for everyone to hear. "You tried to control land that wasn't yours. You impersonated officers, you trespassed, you harassed, and you underestimated me." A hush fell over the barn. Then Bear, bless him, cracked open a soda and added, "That's the last time someone messes with Ranch Boss." The nickname stuck immediately. People cheered. Linda, red-faced and furious, turned on her heel, tripped slightly in the dirt, and stormed back to her SUV. Carl followed. The lawyer just looked embarrassed. By Monday, Linda was forced to step down as HOA president. Turns out, someone leaked the drone footage and fake cop stunt to the local news. The segment aired during the 6 o'clock hour. HOA overreach sparks. Biker-led BBQ justice. Comment section. Glorious. Finally, someone put a Karen in her place. Biker gangs HOAs. Who knew? This needs to be a movie. And my favorite? Justice served. With ribs. Life went back to normal after that. Well, rancher normal. The barn still stands. The bikes still roll through a few times a year. And my property? Quiet again. No drones. No fake citations. Just open skies, morning coffee, and the occasional neighbor waving from a safe distance. As for Linda? Last I heard, she moved to a gated community on the other side of town. Rumor has it they made her sign an agreement that she's not allowed to run for HOA leadership for 5 years. Poetic. Looking back, it wasn't just about the barn, or the bikers, or even Linda. It was about something bigger. Something a lot of us deal with. People who mistake power for permission. See, the loudest person in the room isn't always the one in charge. Sometimes it's the quiet one, the one who watches, waits, plans, and when the moment's right, strikes back with the law, not rage, with facts, not fists. So if you're dealing with your own HOA drama, or some control freak trying to run your life from behind a picket fence, just remember, a well-timed barbecue can be more powerful than any board meeting. And if you made it to the end of this story, I've got one question for you. What would you have done if fake HOA cops raided your ranch? Drop your answer in the comments. And don't forget to type "Justice Served," so I know you're one of the real ones. Like, subscribe, and hey, next time someone underestimates you, make sure they hear the engines before they see the sign.